Alright, welcome back to the channel, everyone. So today we have a few things to discuss. First being my prediction / breakdown of Robert Whittaker versus Reinier de Ridder. And yeah, let's just get raw into it, man. So, as far as records are concerned, Whittaker is 27 wins, 8 losses. De Ridder is at 20 wins, 2 losses. And those 2 losses are coming from outside of the UFC at one championship. So he's currently undefeated in the UFC. So, take that for what it is. Now, as far as countries, Whittaker's fighting out of Australia, De Ridder's fighting out of the Netherlands. Now, height. I feel like height is going to play a huge factor in this fight. Whittaker's listed at 6 foot, but in reality, I feel like he's probably closer to 5'11". Seeing him weigh in and face off against a lot of these other middleweights, he's probably one of the shortest on the roster as far as like the top 15. Calvin Gastelum, to me, doesn't even count. He's just a bloated welterweight, so let's be real. So the UFC especially, take these heights with a grain of salt, give or take an inch or two. Now, as far as De Ridder, he's listed at 6'4", and I believe it because you see him fight against Kevin Holland, and Kevin Holland's a tall guy. He's listed at, I think, like 6'3", and De Ridder looked every bit of 6'4". So, I believe that. As far as reach is concerned, Whittaker is listed at 73.5, De Ridder is listed at 78 inches. So, De Ridder has a height and reach advantage, so he has the total frame advantage over Robert Whittaker. And that's why I feel like it's going to favor him immensely, especially in the grappling. Now, as far as the odds are concerned, Whittaker is the favorite at minus 162, and De Ridder is the underdog at plus 136. Now, I'm a little shocked by this because I would have thought that they would have favored De Ridder simply because of the run he's been on, the momentum, and I get the competition is night and day, but, I feel like De Ridder does have a lot to offer Robert Whittaker. Now, as far as their methods of victory, Robert Whittaker is a 41% TKO / KO rate, and De Ridder is a 25%. Now, I feel like when De Ridder beat Bo Nickel, everyone's like, oh my god, he can strike too, oh whoa! And Bo Nickel, I'd be surprised if I wasn't minus 1,000 against Chimaev. In hindsight, Bo Nickel was a little too green. He's not that developed in his MMA skill set, so we got to take that Bo Nickel fight and the result with a grain of salt. You know what I'm saying? So just because he TKO'd Bo Nickel doesn't mean he can hang with the elite strikers in the middleweight division. That being said, as far as striking in general, I'd have to give the speed to Whittaker, the footwork to Whittaker, the dynamic striking to Whittaker. As far as power is concerned, it's hard to tell, but Whittaker's definitely a lot more accurate. Plus his speed, I'd probably give it to Whittaker just because of the punch placement. And like I said, his accuracy and his just composure in their striking. Whereas De Ridder kind of uses his strikes to set up his grappling. Obviously, he has really good knees in the clinch. But, as far as let's say this was just a striking fight, I'd have to favor Whittaker. But, it's MMA, so it is what it is. Now, as far as submissions go, Robert Whittaker is at a 19% and De Ridder is at a 65%. So De Ridder is obviously night and day better on the grappling than he is on the feet. And I'd say he's definitely better than Whittaker. Like I said, I get the strength of schedule and the competition. It is what it is. But De Ridder, he's very dangerous on his back. He's very dangerous in the clinch, like we've seen against Bo Nickel, but especially grappling. On the ground, you see him get his arm triangles. You see him put him in the triangle choke. He's very dynamic and very well polished on the ground. And Whittaker has this belt in Australia or whatever for wrestling. I don't care. If you're not actively using it in your fights, you can be, a legend in your gym. But if you're not actively implementing that in your fights, you know what I'm saying? It is what it is. Same thing with Gaethje. Oh, well, he's an American wrestler. Blah, blah. When's the last time Gaethje used his wrestling? You know what I'm saying? So, obviously different fighters, but it is what it is. I'd say definitely, if it was just only a grappling fight, I'd give it to De Ridder. So this is kind of more of a old school striker versus grappler. Obviously, they have a bit of both, but, Whittaker's a lot better on the striking than he is on the ground. De Ridder's a lot better on the ground than he is striking. It is what it is. Now, as far as decisions go, Whittaker's at a 41%. And generally, it's decision machine. Well, it is what it is. That being said, Whittaker has proved that he knows how to go the distance, whether it's 3 or 5 rounds. Whereas De Ridder, 10% decision rate, right? So I was looking at De Ridder's record as well. He never really leaves the second, kind of third round. The most he'll go is 3 rounds in his career. And that's the thing too. You see him, I hate to say it, but in his fight against Anatoly Malkin, I seen a little quit in him. I seen, like, he was on the ground and Herb Dean gave him a chance to get up, but he was just like, whatever, and he got up a little too slow, and it is what it is. And he kind of looked gassed too. So as far as cardio goes, and heart, well, we'll separate them. Cardio, definitely Robert Whittaker, 100%. As far as heart, I'd probably lean towards Whittaker as well. I've also, Robert gave up and he got chinned by Dricus. Well, not chin, but, you know. But it's just like night and day skill level. Night and day skill level and the strength of the schedule, right? So it is what it is. Now, as far as their records are concerned, well, not records, but their schedules, Whittaker, he recently just lost to Chimaev. And it was a bad, dominant, kind of like wrestling, you know, just smothered him and then subbed. Domination. And that's the thing. Whittaker said he's got his jaw fixed and all that, and his teeth are no longer a problem. And, you know, that may be true. And he said, like, I guess the UFC paid for it. So, you know, it is what it is. But I feel like even if he didn't have that problem with his jaw or whatever, he still would have gotten submitted by Chimaev. I feel like elite grapplers against Whittaker, like I said, that size difference, the reach difference, I just feel like they can get a hold of him and just, you know, kind of go to town on him, right? That being said, only the top 5 of the middleweight division. As far as like the rest of the middleweight division, good luck doing that to Whittaker. But then, so before that, Whittaker tuned up Alaskarov, and that was on short notice, so it is what it is. And then before that, he got a unanimous decision against Paulo Costa, and people are like, oh, well, Costa's washed, blah, blah. Costa didn't look that bad in that fight. Because remember, he did land that wheel kick, and Paulo Costa was there to fight. And that's the thing, too, Robert Whittaker, he needs to remain focused the whole 25 minutes, or as long as it will go, because Whittaker tends to do good on the feet, and then he'll kind of just get cracked by something out of nowhere. Like, I feel like he starts to do good and he lets his guard down. So he needs to keep his guard up this whole time against Ritter. And then before that, he got kind of like beat down by Dricus du Plessis. And that's the thing. Whittaker did have success, but Dricus kind of manhandled him, right? Grabbed him by the headlock and just took him down like your older brother or something. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I kind of stress the whole strength thing. I give the strength to Reinier de Ridder. Now, as far as Reinier de Ridder, so he TKO'd Bo Nickel in his most recent fight. Great win, but in hindsight, you know what I mean? I guess we don't know until we see Bo Nickel fight again. But like I said, Bo Nickel's way too green. And for him to be jumping from Bo Nickel to Robert Whittaker, huge difference. Huge difference. So I do worry about that for de Ridder. But yeah, then before that, submitted Holland. And that's the thing. Anytime Kevin Holland goes up against a grappler at 185, he's a guaranteed loss, right? So it is what it is. And then before that, he didn't look great against Gerald Meerschaert, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt of having the UFC nerves, right? Every fighter has that. Look at any time a fighter comes to the UFC for the first time, generally their performances are kind of shit. It is what it is. So, and then before that, like I said, he lost to Anatoly Malkin, or no, he beat Magomed Kurasayev. I don't know who that is in one. And then before that, he lost to Anatoly Malkin. And Anatoly Malkin, like I said, a lot of people were saying he quit in that fight. You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. So as far as how I see the fight playing out, I see Whittaker doing really well in the first round. I see Whittaker keeping him away from him. Whittaker cannot have his feet against the fence, and he needs to gain respect from de Ridder early, as soon as possible. Whether it's a 1-2 down the middle, followed by that head kick he likes to do. Whether it's, they're in the clinch and Whittaker's just body, bum, head. But that being said, Whittaker cannot get close to de Ridder. I feel like the soon as de Ridder gets his arms around Whittaker, it's kind of going to be the beginning of the end. I feel like Whittaker has to play this fight perfectly for the first, 2-3 rounds. Once it gets to rounds 4 or 5, if it does, I see de Ridder definitely slowing down. And I feel like Whittaker, he should chop at de Ridder's base. Chop those calf kicks, go those low kicks. Definitely, just keep him away from you. Do like the karate oblique stomp to the knees. Do to the guts. Just keep him off of you. Get that respect early. But that being said, a lot easier said than done, especially against de Ridder. Whereas de Ridder, like I said, I definitely think he probably will lose the first round. I feel like de Ridder will take some shots. He'll be willing to step into the fire to get close to Whittaker, to get to that headlock. Because that's the thing, I don't think he'll go for a double leg against Robert Whittaker. I feel like it's going to kind of be from the clinch. or out in the open where he gets his hands on him and then kind of drags him to the ground. Whittaker, as much as he is short, that means his center of gravity is a lot lower too. So for DeRitter at 6'4" to go all the way down and do a double leg on Whittaker, I just don't see that happening. But that being said, Whittaker, I feel like he also needs to work like the Jack Della Maddalena or the game plan, where it's just like constantly threaten the uppercuts, threaten those knees, make it seem like it'd be a nightmare for DeRitter to get close to him. Make DeRitter uncomfortable, force this fight to stand up. I feel like as long as, like I said before, as long as this fight's standing, I feel like Whittaker should have the general advantage. But that being said, DeRitter, once he gets going and he starts pressuring Whittaker, Whittaker doesn't really like to get pressured. He's a lot more of like a out in the open, lead kick, karate style. He doesn't have that boxing like Ilia Topuria or someone like a Poirier where he's comfortable in the pocket and boom, 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 boom. Whittaker does not like to get pressured. So as far as DeRitter, I feel like it's the exact opposite. Pressure Whittaker. You're going to have to take a few shots, watch that calf kick, but then get up close to Whittaker, get him up against the fence, get that tie clinch, go for those knees, because that's the thing. I feel like Whittaker's big advantage over Reinier DeRitter, aside from the striking itself, is the cardio. So if you can sap that cardio from Whittaker, make him hold your weight, then start to try to get him to the ground, go for some ground and pound. And that's the thing. Reinier DeRitter, he'll get that leg lock and just keep Whittaker there. I feel like that's the thing. It may look like stalling, but I feel like DeRitter's definitely going to kind of hold Whittaker down, drain his energy. I don't think he's going to go for like a ground and pound TKO. I think he's going to look for a submission. I feel like he's going to try to get Whittaker panic where Whittaker makes a mistake. He's like, oh, fuck, I can't be here like Chimaev. Shit. And then like, oh, leave my neck open. Boom. I just don't trust Whittaker against these high-level grapplers, and it is what it is. So I feel like as far as my official prediction, as long as DeRitter doesn't get tuned up too bad in the first rounds, I feel like DeRitter can definitely get that submission. I feel like he's going to take him down like Dricus did and then sub him like Chimaev did. Take him down with the head choke, get on his back, wear him down for a round or two, and then get that submission rear naked choke. I am worried for DeRitter, and that's the thing. I like Whittaker. I don't want him to lose, but I'm betting with my mind here. I have to favor DeRitter in rounds. That's the thing. Every time I say I don't want to say round one to be disrespectful, it ends in round one. So it's like either rounds 1 or 2. I'll say that. Either rounds 1 or 2, submission by DeRitter, and if Whittaker wins, it'll be rounds 3 or 4 where DeRitter's not comfortable in those positions, not comfortable that late in the fight, and get a TKO. I feel like Whittaker, he definitely could target the body, but I feel like he should just headhunt. But that being said, him headhunting, he has to go so much into the pocket because of his reach disadvantage. That'll give the DeRitter the advantage. So I just see DeRitter with the momentum, and just Whittaker's been at the top of the sport, and I get he wants to come back, but he has already got the belt. Whereas DeRitter's like, fuck it up, I've won 2 belts, but they still don't view me as like a champ for the majority of the time, right? Because it's like, oh, you're fighting taxi cab drivers, whatever. So I definitely give the momentum and the drive to DeRitter. So yeah, strength, grappling, drive, and just overall willing to win. I'd say I'd give it to DeRitter. But that being said, the heart is a question for me in the cardio. So if Whittaker can drain that cardio and bring him to the later rounds, I see him getting the TKO. But like I said, if I was betting, I'd have to bet DeRitter by submission. I don't trust the whole Josh shit. I don't know what the deal is with Whittaker. And I don't know where he's at with his head, because that's the thing. As much as he hasn't been on a losing streak, you know, he beat Aliskerov, you beat Costa, but neither one of those guys are championship level, right? So he lost to Chimaev, he lost to Dricus, he lost to Adesanya. So that's the thing. Anytime Whittaker goes against these elite guys, at least for the time, like the last few years, he loses. And I think it's a bit early to say DeRitter's elite, especially with this kind of sloppy striking, but I do think he has the tools to get Whittaker out of there, respectfully. Both these guys are good guys. That's the thing. Normally I bitch about lack of promotion. It is what it is. Like, not everyone's going to have that beef, and it's like, how the hell do you hate Robert Whittaker? You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. But yeah, it's going to be a great fight. But yeah, I see early submission by DeRitter. Now, moving on. Justin Gaethje. once again, is beyond delusional. He does an interview with Brett Okamoto, and I'm sure they're friends or whatever, so Brett Okamoto never really asked any interesting questions either, but yeah, I'm just really pissed off that Brett Okamoto doesn't push back on anything Gaethje's saying. So this is what Gaethje says. Well, Brett Okamoto, in context, he's talking about like when it all unfolded when Topuria beat Oliveira and then Paddy got up in the cage. He's like, oh, like, what were you thinking? What are you feeling? So he says this. Do you see Paddy as an opponent as a potential of getting your title shot first? And then Gaethje's like, no, absolutely not. If that's the route that they want to take, then I don't believe they need me anymore. And it's like, what the fuck does that even mean? Like, the UFC doesn't need Justin Gaethje. Obviously, the UFC needs fighters to survive and you know, sell the sport because we're not having the people in the suits and ties doing all the fucking business going out in the cage and fighting. So it is what it is. They do need the fighters. But as far as Justin Gaethje, I don't think they need him. And I think he's playing this all really wrong because you see what happens with the whole John Jones situation, right? Where he just fucks around and he says a bunch of stupid shit. Obviously, it's night and day different in position-wise because Justin Gaethje's never been champion, but still. I feel like the UFC's probably like, fuck it, no, we just have to deal with John Jones' shit. And if they're standing up to the GOAT of the sport and Dana White saying like, hey, John, you can fuck off. Like, I'm not trusting you with the White House. I doubt they're going to be like, oh, okay, Gaethje, okay, here's your 18,000 shot, okay, sorry. Like, I just don't see that. I feel like Gaethje's just trying to get himself a title shot because he knows he probably will lose against any of the top 5. That being said, Gaethje's not washed by any means, but he's definitely a lot slower. He's not in his prime. I feel like if I'm Gaethje, though, I've said this before. If you look at Gaethje's possible opponents, right? It's not going to be Max Holloway, not a chance. He just got knocked out by him. Well, not just, but still. You have Arman, Dan Hooker, and Paddy Pimblett. Dan Hooker, obviously the fans would love it. I'd love that fight to be rebooked. Don't get me wrong. But I just see that fight in Justin Gaethje's mind, he's like, fuck, I don't want to do the Poirier fight. Because remember, he said, he's like, oh, we don't want to put our families through that. Hooker's the same thing. That's going to be a fucking nightmare. It's going to be hell in there for as long as it lasts. Which I think it will last probably like, 3-4 rounds. If it's like a, 5-round fight or whatever. But yeah. As far as Arman's concerned, Gaethje's like, fucking hell, my wrestling's not where it needs to be against these elite guys. So I feel like Gaethje will probably get like, out-wrestled by Arman and then just kind of ground and pounded. Maybe a submission, but I'd say probably more of a ground and pound kind of thing from Arman. And then you look at Paddy, right? He did look great against Chandler, but I feel like as far as those two matchups, Paddy Pimblett is probably one of the best matchups for Gaethje because Paddy Pimblett does get hit, and as much as he is good on the ground, it's Chandler, right? So I feel like if I'm Gaethje, I look at Paddy Pimblett as the easiest test, plus you get the most, well, not the most credit, but the most like hype from the fans. Because people are like, oh, we want to see Paddy versus Topuria, which I don't think should happen yet. But yeah. And then Gaethje's like, I know that sounds entitled, but I'm number 3. I'm 3-1 in his last 4. And the context, right? There always needs to be context because we look at Gaethje, right? So Gaethje is at number 5. He just went down a ranking. So sure, he is, 3-1 in his last 4. But that being said, you beat Fiziev, who was injured coming off of a couch, right? And in hindsight, everyone can say, hey, Fiziev belongs at 145. Let's be honest here. Before that, brutally, like he was beat down by Holloway and then knocked out, right? I feel like Gaethje can't comprehend how much that does to the fans' perception of his title aspirations. Because that's the thing. Holloway, don't get me wrong, Holloway's one of the best to ever do it at 145. Don't get it twisted. But for Holloway to come up into the weight class and tune you up that badly and knock you out, especially Holloway's not really known for his KO power, but obviously that's changing because he's now in 155 and he has a lot more power, but still, for him to do that to Justin Gaethje, it leaves a bad taste in the fans' mouth, and especially MMA math, it is what it is, but Topuria knocked Holloway out. Bad. Knocked Oliveira out. Bad. Who battered Oliveira. Battered Gaethje and then subbed him, right? So it's like, and then before that, he beat Poirier by head kick, which, it's a good win, but that being said, Poirier was definitely at the later half of his career, and hate to say it, but like a win over Poirier is great, but Poirier has also lost against Oliveira, lost against Makhachev, lost against Holloway, lost against Khabib. So it's like beating a guy who's, struggling to beat these elite guys. It's great and all, but is it title shot worthy? You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. And then before that, he beat Fiziev again in their first fight, which in hindsight, their first fight was, did well for Gaethje because people were like, oh, Fiziev's going to tune him up. It is what it is. Obviously, hindsight's 2020, but, So, yeah. On paper, Gaethje definitely does have a case, but like I said, in context, it's like, okay, slow down. I think Gaethje definitely needs one more. So for him to just be going out, like, public negotiations, saying all this stupid shit, it's really frustrating because it's like, you can't have like the top 3 of the sport or whatever just all saying, yeah, I'm just going to wait for the title shot. Armin's like, yeah, I'll wait for the title shot. Gaethje, yeah, I'll wait for the title shot. Whereas at least Paddy wants to fight someone for the belt. Obviously he's like, fuck, if they give me the Topuria fight, no brainer. But, it is what it is. If he can get the Topuria fight without having to fight someone else, he's going to take it, right? Because that's the money fight. But he knows that it's probably better for him to fight one more time to prove that he has the top 5 skill level to go up against a champion. So Gaethje's like, oh, the champion was calling to fight me in Makhachev. And then they bring a new guy in who's to fight Oliveira, who was 2-2. And that being said, I agree. Oliveira should have never been in there against Ilia Topuria. I've said that from before it was even the fight was announced. And then Gaethje's like, if their algorithm is just to use me to build someone's name, I'm going to have to really reevaluate what I'm doing here. I signed up for a merit-based system, and I've lived by that. And if they want to give Armin the fight, he shit the bed. And that's the thing. I'm starting to think that, like, maybe I am wrong about pushing Armin to the title shot. In my dream scenario, I wanted Armin versus Ilya on the Makhachev JDM card, just to build that up, and then have Gaethje and Paddy on the same one, and have that go, and, fireworks, have the press conference go crazy, build up all these different storylines. But if that's not possible, then yeah, Armin definitely needs to have another fight for sure. It's unfortunate because Armin is clearly the best one aside from Topuria in lightweight right now with Makhachev gone, but it is what it is. So yeah, and then Gaethje goes back to saying, oh, I took the Holloway fight, so I did a favor, blah, blah. It's like, okay, like, you're not the only one in the UFC to do favors, and it's just, Gaethje's, as the kids say, it's giving ungrateful, It's like you have 2 title shots plus the BMF title shot. It's like, and then just demanding more and more and more. And I get you've done a lot for the company, but at the same time, he's got to look around and see like, hey, there's a lot of people who have a claim to the title shot that are more deserving than me. So it's just, I can't stand this lack of humility of Justin Gaethje. And it's just, it is what it is. If he retires without fighting again, I feel like it's probably better for his health, especially as his brain and all that. But yeah, I feel like in all reality, Gaethje needs to have a slice of humble pie and be like, hey man, you got dog walked by Holloway. You lost 2 of your last title shots. So let's be real here. Let's be realistic. You are in the later half of your career, and I get Gaethje probably doesn't want to risk fighting again to lose the title shot, but it is a business at the end of the day, and they've done a lot of favors for you. So as much as you've done a lot of favors for them, vice versa. You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. I hate to back the UFC and back the man, but it is what it is. I'm just so tired of Justin Gaethje going about this. Learn from John Jones. Learn from all these guys who make these ultimatums. Dana White even said, he's like, I don't like that. And he even in the post-fight press conference with Dana White talking about Holloway beating Poirier, he's like, yeah, he's in a really good position. So that's the thing. Holloway's in a better position than Justin Gaethje, which I get he got knocked out by Poirier, but I'm not saying I don't want to see Poirier versus Holloway yet, but technically it is what it is. I mean, it's debatable, right? And then Armin 100% has more of a case than Justin Gaethje. So, yeah, Justin Gaethje really needs to give his head a shake and be a little more humble. You know what I'm saying? Because you've seen what John Jones did. You do not want to make the fans can't stand you at the latter half of your career. Because you look at here as well. 1,000 comments and 70,000 views. Generally, if there's this kind of comment or amount of comments on a video, it's either like someone's sick or something that's like, oh, get well soon or something like that, like a heartfelt video, or a lot of people disagree. And if you go through the comments, many people can't stand this mentality from Gaethje. So my advice for Gaethje, take the Paddy fight. Keep in good standings with the fans. Don't be this diva kind of guy. Prove yourself against Paddy. Boom. Then you get the title shot. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. Do your best to get along with the UFC in the latter half of your career because you do not want them to remove your memory from history. And not only that, the UFC will provide so many more opportunities for Justin Gaethje if he plays it cool. You know what I'm saying? So if he starts to fuck around with the relationship, I can see them taking away a lot of stuff from him in the future. So yeah, it is what it is. Like I said, Gaethje, give your head a shake, man. Get a little more humble. And remember, you've done favors, but look at the opportunities you've got. 2 title shots, BMF title shot, all these huge fights on the UFC 300 and all that. So, yeah. That being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Like and subscribe. And, yeah, peace.